Crystal Wade here with Let's Wade In. So glad you could join us today. We've been talking about costly gifts for your special generation. To understand the background of this costly gift, we need to again scroll back in time, and this time let's go all the way back to the beginning. In the garden, as you know, the Father created man and woman, Adam and Eve. And in this perfect setting, with the most wonderful man and woman that had ever been created, because they were so pure and so full of the life and light and love of the Father, they were there in this garden together. And now Adam was a male and Eve was a female, and what that meant is they looked different, they had different personalities and different biology, but they were a team. The Father caused them to be a team, and what they had was very unique and very special. It was as if Adam was the king and Eve was the queen, but they were both ruling together. They were equally ruling as king and queen, instead of the queen ruling only or the king ruling only. Together, they were both the rulers of their nation, which was the garden, and the Father intended for them to take that team, the ruling team, and go out to all the earth, they and their children, and take this perfect environment and spread it throughout all the earth. But as you know, they disobeyed, and sin came into them and came into the world, and the paycheck for sin is death. And all the rest of the people through the generations were kept in slavery by their fear of death, and that was a real issue, and we talk about that in the first video in the series, until the Lord Jesus Christ came and paid the paycheck for that sin and offered all who will admit that they're sinners and believe in Him and confess that He is Lord, that give the free gift of life that the Father has provided. And the opportunity to live with the Father on this earth and complete the missions here, and then go home to heaven where we will be received with great celebration. So the plan was changed when sin came into the earth from that leading team. And it wasn't too long after that before women ended up in servant positions, in slavery positions, in very difficult positions. And that was all because of the effects of sin on this world. It was never the Father's intention. The Father intended for the men and the women, the boys and the girls, to be together as teams, different but good, rule together as teams, as a king and queen together. And so we had fallen very far from what the Father intended, to women being slaves and servanthoods and all kinds of difficult situations. And then we fast forward several centuries, and we come to Europe. And in Europe, in Western Europe, for many years, it was thought, well, women are emotional, and so they cannot use their minds and do things that the men would do in jobs and in different situations. And so some of the women that had a mind from God, the Father, because the Father, even though men and women are different, have given both of us, men, women, boys, and girls, we both have minds, wills, and emotions. So the women have minds that they would like to use, and the men also have emotions that they would like to use. So we both have both. But at the time, it was thought, well, women are emotional and they shouldn't be able to use their mind. And so women that wanted to write a book, that had a book in their hearts from the Father, because He's the one that puts that in us, had to write it under a man's name in order to get it published. And then fast forward several years and come to America. And that thought, that train of thought, was still in our society. And so the thinking that women are emotional, and so they don't really understand how to think or what's going on, and so therefore they should not vote. And so this went on for quite some time until some very courageous women who formed the movement of the women's suffrage stood up, and they began peaceful protesting and other venues of meeting, and until they were able to change those laws. And they went through some very, very difficult things in their quest to secure this freedom. Some of them were even locked in prisons because they were standing up and saying, we as a woman have the right to use our mind and cast a vote for who's going to be the leader of our nation. And then time went on, and other women stood up and fought for equal pay for women for equal work. And it's true. If a man or woman is doing the same job, then the pay should be equal. But at the time, it was thought, well, women don't bring as much value as men do, and so they will get less pay for the job. And so these women stood up and fought that line of thinking until they changed the laws that we get equal pay for equal work. Now, some of the fruit of these movements have not been that great. Some of the fruits of this movement have been wonderful, getting us closer back to what the Father intended. Men and women, boys and girls, both different as designed by the Father, yes, but both with minds and wills and emotions, who have the freedom to use those. So this costly gift that has been given to your generation is the freedom of women to have freedom of movement in their thoughts and in their jobs and in their pay and in society. We've come a long way for the days when we would say about a woman that she was a bad woman if she wore her dress above her ankles. And that is really what was said. And so this costly gift of freedom for women has been secured at a high price, and it has been given to your generation. And it's been given to your generation because the Father and the fathers and mothers through time believed in you. So now that you know that it is valuable, take it and build it bigger. Now, we have some more costly gifts to talk about, but until then, remember, go with God and go for the gold.